First, I want to roll up my sleeves because I'm a working academic. I see myself as a blue-collar academic. I want to talk, we've now done the policy part, and I want to start in with the thought and communication part. And communication is all about thinking and about understanding what it is you believe and what you're doing, because it's mostly unconscious. And I want to talk about making the unconscious conscious. That's what I do. I'm a cognitive scientist. Now, and messaging is about that, and you'll see that momentarily. But before I get into that, I want to talk about communication systems, because conservatives have set up a very elaborate communication system. You've heard about, how many of you know what the Powell memo is? Yeah, exactly. You now need to know what the Powell memo is. 1971, Lewis Powell, before he went on the Supreme Court, appointed by Nixon, wrote a memo for the National Chamber of Commerce about the situation for conservatives relative to the Vietnam War. And he started out by saying, by the way, look up Powell memo on the web and you can read it. He said, we got a problem. The best and brightest of our students don't want to be conservatives. Here's what we need to do. Whoa, I think we get feedback. Let's just talk. Here's what we need to do. First, he said, we got to get rich conservatives to donate professorships to major universities like the Olin Professorship at Harvard. We need to get them to support institutions that are conservative institutions like the Olin Institute at Harvard and the Hoover Institution at Stanford. But we can't trust universities. We've got to set up institutions. They're called think tanks. And there are now over 80 national ones and many state ones all over the country. Can you hear me? We got some feedback there. Okay, so that they have plenty of think tanks. They also said we need to get the best scholars we have in there, pay them well, get them lots of people working for them, paid well. And we also have to set up magazines and book publishing outfits, and they've done that. They have their journals, their book publishing outfits. And they said we have to buy media. And they bought lots of media all over the country. And in addition to that, they said we have to train people. They have training institutes like the Leadership Institute in Virginia that trains tens of thousands of conservatives every year down to the age of 15 in summer camps. And they're in 15 countries right now. They've been doing this for over 30 years. And then they have to get these things out. They have a list of people who they have trained all over the country. And every day they can send out talking points to that list, see who wants to talk on those issues. They have a booking agency that books thousands of people all over the country on their local radio stations, on their TV stations, in high schools, in businesses, and so on. Lots of them all over the country. And that's how they spread their ideas. Okay? Now, this has been known for about well over a dozen years by the Democrats who figured it out, and they've done nothing about this. And we'll talk in a little while about why they have done nothing. But it's important to start doing something, and I think that this organization needs to organize in this. You need to be able to have spokespeople, not just you certainly, all the officials, but ordinary citizens, because look, if you're elected, you need cover. You need people who are there to support you, who need to say things independently of you all the time, who need to go on radio and TV and talk shows and in high schools in addition to you, saying the same things and that you do. That's very important. So you know that, and the question is, how do we set up such a network? It's not that hard and it's not that expensive, and it's easy it can be done. We're setting one up in Wisconsin right now. We started 2 months ago, and already there's an organization setting up there. I'll be there in a couple of weeks. Now, the big thing is, what do you say, and how do you say it, and what do you understand? The first thing to understand is all politics is moral. That is, if somebody says, here's my policy, you have lots of policies, you're going to have plenty of policies, you know what policies you want, do what I say because it's right. Not because it's wrong, not because it doesn't matter. Don't say do it because it's terrible. Nobody says that. Do it because it doesn't matter. Do it, you know. No, because it's right. The other guys say, don't do that, do something else that contradicts it, because they have a different notion of what's right. So what I did back in 1996 was write a book called Moral Politics that talked about what those moral systems are. And we'll go into that momentarily. But it's important that you understand your own. The next thing you need to understand is that all thought is physical. Physical. Neural circuitry in your brain. That's what I study. And the way it works is important. If you don't have any circuitry in your brain for understanding something, you can't understand it. You can only understand what your brain allows you to. Now, the next thing to know is that you think in terms of structures called frames. What is a frame? Very simple to understand. Think of a restaurant, okay? You know the kinds of people and so on that are in a restaurant. There's waiters, there's chefs, there's customers, cashiers, there are checks, there are, menus and so on. You know what restaurants are about. You know what's not in a restaurant. Herds of elephants, luckily, are not in restaurants. You know what is not in the frame. You go into a restaurant, you sit down at the table, somebody wheels over a patient to be operated on, the surgeon comes out, not in the restaurant. Right? Wrong place, wrong frame. Right? That's what a frame is about. It's a structure that looks like that. Those structures have been worked out, described in great detail, and we know the kinds of neural circuitry it takes to carry out those structures. Okay? You think in terms of them. Because all politics is moral, all political frames are subsidiary to moral frames. They use them. And if you activate a political frame, you activate the corresponding moral frame. So example of a frame, and many frames are metaphorical. Simple example, tax relief. So if you take that idea, what is the relief frame? There is some affliction that harms you, right? A relief is something that takes that affliction away. If somebody is relieving it, they're a hero. If you try to stop them, you're a villain, right? Add tax to that, and you get taxation as an affliction. So tax relief is always about a conservative idea, and it activates the conservative moral system. So the first day George Bush was in office, he talked about tax relief, and the second day and the third day, over and over and over, until the New York Times started putting tax relief on the front page. Democrats started talking about tax relief for the middle class, and basically they got lured into helping conservatives. Okay? They're activating a conservative worldview. So this is important to know what you say and don't say. The next thing to know about frames is that negating a frame activates a frame. Don't think of an elephant, right? All of you, whatever you do, don't think of an elephant. Ready? Right? You're going to think of an elephant. And suppose you're invited onto Fox News to be the token progressive, and they say, okay, we're going to have a little debate. Are you for or against tax relief? Doesn't matter if you're for or against. It's still taxation is an affliction. All right? So if you negate the other guy's language, because all words are defined with respect to frames, all words, language isn't neutral. All words are defined with respect to frames. If you use their language to argue against them, you're helping them. And the first thing they teach at the Leadership Institute is not to do that. Conservatives are largely, trained not to do that. Now they have occasionally made mistakes. Nixon said, "I am not a crook." Everybody thought of him as a crook, right? The most recent mistake was by Chris Christie. "I am not a bully," right? So now the point of this is clear. You don't argue against this. You use your own framing, and it has to be moral framing. Now, when I got into the study of framing in politics, I got into it in the following way. In 1994, there was a little book that was put out called The Contract with America, written by Frank Luntz. And he had 10 things that conservatives would do if they were elected. They would get rid of abortions, they would impose a flat tax, they would make sure that everybody could own guns, they could, would get rid of all environmental laws, and so on. So I read this, and I said, these are weird people. What does abortion have to do with taxation? What does the flat tax have to do with owning guns? What does owning guns have to do with environmental legislation? And of course, they wanted tort reform. What does that have to do with any of those? Okay? And I said, that's weird. Funny people. I'm against all of those. What do my views have to do with each other? I couldn't answer it. Now, for me, that was embarrassing because this is my field. I study ideas and categories. So I did some research for about 9 months, a lot of research, and finally figured it out. And I figured it out because one of my students wrote a paper pointing out that we have a metaphor, we all have, of the nation as a family. We have founding fathers. We send our sons and daughters to war. We have homeland security. We don't want missiles in our backyard, and on and on. Now, what I did, I'm the guy who figured out the mathematical structure of metaphorical thought. So I wrote it down, worked backwards, and said if there are 2 different views of the nation, there might be 2 different views of the family, and they popped out. A strict father family and a nurturing parent family. What is a nurturing parent family? It's one that goes like this. It says you have 2 parents, equal responsibility if there are 2. Could be single parent, but equal responsibility. The job of the parent is to empathize with their children, to understand them, to see what they need, etc., to have 2-way communication so they can communicate what they need. Then your job is to raise them, 1, to be fulfilled in life, 2, to take care of themselves, and 3, to take care of others, to be responsible for themselves and others. And you train them to empathize with others, to have personal and social responsibility, and to work as hard as they can to be fulfilled in life and to help their community. Right? That's nurturing parenting, period. You all know that. That's not strict parenting. Strict parenting is strict father, if they're assuming that there's a father. And the father is the ultimate authority. He knows best. His job is to make sure his kids are trained correctly. That his kids are assumed to be born bad, they just do what feels good. You've heard about feel-good liberalism? Conservatives write books about this, saying liberals have not been trained properly to be moral.